Hey guys, I got a really good question from my Peak HD team about diet and training and how those two go together. So we're in a strength phase right now. We're preparing for either a competition or a mock meet sometime in mid-spring. And so we're following a strength peaking program. And I got some questions about guys who wanted to cut weight and were concerned that the volume of training would not be sufficient to preserve muscle during that cut. It's a really good question, but I think it kind of comes at the goal from the wrong way. So here's what I mean by that. Most people, when they think about their goals for bulking or cutting, they think, okay, well, I need to either add calories or subtract calories, and what kind of diet do I need to go along with that? And typically it's going to be a higher volume program, because if you want to build muscle, you want more volume for hypertrophy, for sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, makes sense. And if you want to lose weight, you also want high volume so that you can maintain muscle. And I don't quite agree with that. I do think that your diet and training need to be synergistic. But I think that instead of coming at it from, here is my goal, here is my diet, here is my program, try and look at it almost the other way around. Here's my goal, here's the training that's going to support my goal. What are the recovery resources that I can put into this training plan to make sure that it supports my goal? So let's take an example. Let's say that your example is exactly the one I brought up. You're on the Peak HD team, you want to lose weight, and you're concerned that because the volume is lower right now in this phase of training, you're going to lose muscle. That's really not the case. Instead, what you need to look at is, okay, my goal is to lose weight. I'm following this certain training program. My recovery resources are food, and I'm going to decrease that. So that means I need to increase either my sleep, my super supplements, my body work, whatever other recovery resources I can increase to make sure that my strength continues to go up while losing weight. Because obviously gaining strength is part of the goal as well. The question about losing muscle isn't really a concern, because if you're dieting appropriately, you're only going to lose body fat. Yes, if you're crash dieting and you're in an extreme caloric surplus, or you're very, very lean already, or in other circumstances like that, your performance-enhancing drug regimen is completely off the end, then maybe you'll lose muscle. But in the vast majority of cases, if you are training hard, and if you are following a sound program across the board, you're not going to lose muscle. Now let's take the opposite scenario. Let's say that your goals are to gain size and to add strength, right? And you're still following this peaking program. In that case, yes, there is some value to the volume work, right? There is some value to sarcoplasmic hypertrophy and getting a good pump to build up the size of the muscles, give you more of that rounded bodybuilder appearance. However, you still have to look at your recovery resources. Unless you're eating an astronomical amount or taking an astronomical amount of performance-enhancing drugs and are willing to put on a little bit of fat, you're not going to have enough recovery resources to support building muscle, gaining strength, and gaining that type of size. So you have to make some trade-offs. And in this case, the trade-off in my suggestion for the trade-off would be, okay, I'm going to omit the pump work. I know that I'm going to have to use a slightly smaller caloric deficit, right? So I don't add as much fat. But in exchange for that, I'm going to add size in the form of contractile tissue and strength. As an aside, the reason I recommend that is because in my experience, it's very easy to add the sarcoplasmic work at another time of your training and gain that extra size relatively quickly when you can focus on it and aren't concerned about strength. What I wouldn't do is just slap the sarcoplasmic work on top of what you're already doing, because then you are trying to meet those three goals, and it's just not reasonable. You're just asking too much of your body. The reason I think that people have this misconception that they need to follow a certain program no matter what the goal is, a certain diet, no matter what the goal is, I really think is tied to traditional bodybuilding and performance-enhancing drug strategies, right? Traditionally in bodybuilding, you'll have an off-season, you'll use higher anabolic compounds, tend to be a little bit gentler on the body, tend to produce more size and less strength, right? And you'll tend to follow a higher volume training program with a lot of heavy work, right? Because you have those extra recovery resources. Versus in season, when you're at a very extreme caloric deficit, you're dropping your strength worth entirely, and you're really increasing your androgens, right? Androgens are what are going to give you that harder, denser look and also build strength. So in that case, as a bodybuilder, you build strength through the training in the off season, and you build strength through the drugs in the in season. I really don't recommend that approach if your goal is at all concerned with strength, because in the long term, your strength will be lower for that reason. You know, you just have to make sure that you're focused on strength, not all the time, but the majority of time, whether it's in season or out of season. And then you can, you know, kind of manipulate your diet and certain aspects of your training when you have a little wiggle room. And that's what I did this past year, right? I took the year off to add the size that I needed to perform at the level of strength that I wanted. But now I've kind of returned to my old training methods. Even though I'm maintaining my weight right now, I'm also maintaining my size. I'm also gaining strength very quickly. So don't try to misconstrue the idea that diet, training, and goals all have to follow the same pattern. Instead, make your goals first, training to support those goals, realize you'll need to make trade-offs, and then decide how you can allocate your recovery resources appropriately to support those goals in that training.